Hello, Social Dragoons. My name is Alex, and today I wanted to talk Power Rangers. In case it wasn't obvious enough by my community posts, I wanted to do this video for a long time, and, well, I tried to do a script for it, but it just kept coming out wrong, or it just didn't sound right, so this is going to be a free-form video, so bear with me here, and if I start to stutter, you know why. So, just to get the news out of the way, Disney is rebooting Power Rangers. Yay, he said sarcastically. Like, I'm sorry, but Disney has not been doing it lately. Like, their animated movies, nah. Their Marvel productions have been absolute ass. Though I hear it's not quite as bad, but I'll be honest, I stopped caring around the time that Infinity War came about, and I've heard nothing but mixed to bad things about everything after. So, the best I can hope for without getting my expectations too high is that the season isn't like Operation Overdrive. And I think that's a fair comparison because that was one of the seasons that was under Disney's control back when they had the rights to the franchise originally. But that topic's a whole other can of worms for another day. And for anyone who's curious, the showrunners are the same people who did the Percy Jackson series on Disney+. From what I remember, they like to do a bunch of research on a topic before they actually start to make it a show, so at least they do their homework, you know? Now, I also should mention what I'm going to do for this video. First, I'm only going to be covering a single season. This is just to help me make it more concise and I don't strain off topic way too often. Though, sometimes I might do it, because, you know, I'm autistic like that. Secondly, if you don't like any of the ideas I have, then that's perfectly fine. In fact, if you got your own ideas for how you do the show, leave them in the comments. Just don't make it a manhunt down there, okay? That's all I can ask. And before we get too deep into the nitty-gritty, I think we should establish, like, what season this is, right? So for me, what I'd want to do is reinvent Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Season 1. Now, hear me out with this one, just hear me out. I understand where people are coming from with Mighty Morphin being everywhere, right? Hasbro has made a point to sell that season like no tomorrow. Like, there's been all kinds of legacy stuff about it, new versions of older toys coming out, you know. But here's the thing, right? It is where the franchise started in America, right? Like this was the first ever season of Power Rangers. Like, Power Rangers specifically, not Super Sentai, that was Japan, but Power Rangers on its own, right? This was the show that introduced many people to the concept of tokusatsu. Unless we're talking about Godzilla, but that's another can of worms. So, Mighty Morphin Season 1 is ground zero for this series, okay? It is where everything will start and where everything will build off of. And so on and so on. Now, I understand, again, that it's been overmarketed, overused, but I think it can work in this instance because it is a reboot. You gotta start somewhere, and why not start with somewhere familiar, right? Okay, so now we got that out of the way, I think we should probably talk about the tone. Well, tone and audience, I should say. Now, I did kind of want to take a bit of an MCU approach here, but not modern MCU. Like, early days, 2008's Iron Man and Captain America the First Avenger, whenever that movie came out. Basically make it more mature, like tackle a lot of themes like loss and abuse, and in a way grooming, but I'll talk about that later, okay? But anyway, these kind of themes should be baked into the tone of the show without the characters needing to throw in a dirty line or a curse word every other sentence like some other indie projects, but I'm not going to name any names here. Now, why young adults specifically? Well, mainly because adults are the main ones talking about Power Rangers on YouTube. Like, they're the ones buying the toys. They're the ones talking about the shows and the lore and all that stuff. They are the ones who are keeping this franchise afloat, essentially. Now, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, obviously. Like, every fandom has its darker side. It's just like unavoidable at some points. But these guys have the money to buy the merchandise, right? Because, like, that's kind of how shows like this sort of live or die, right? Like, if they don't meet the merch sales, then gotta axe them, right? Isn't that like what happens with Transformers and stuff? But anyway, I get that these are kid shows, but the American writing kind of sucks compared to the Sentai versions. Like, holy crap. Like, it just sort of boggles my mind. Like, we've had shows in the past that embraced very, very dark and heavy themes, and nowadays it's like, oh, well, the kids can't really handle it nowadays. You fucking snowflakes, I swear to God. Sorry, I just hate it when people do the think of the kids argument, but they don't really think of the kids. They're just using them for an argument. And one last thing, I would try to make this a bit of a drama mixed with a superhero show, because, well, that's kind of how Super Sentai was, so why not just, like, try to harken back to its roots just a little bit? I mean, same goes for Kamen Rider, but maybe I'll save that topic for another video. Okay, enough yakking. Let's talk about the heroes. Woo! Okay, so this will be a 5-man band starting out. As in, it is a team of 5. They all got powers and all kinds of personalities and stuff like that. So I'm going to be going over them the best that I can with some other stuff here and there. Alright, so let's go in roll call order. First up is Zack, the Black Ranger. Now, already this is a bit of a problem here because, well, Zack was a black guy. He was the Black Ranger. You can see how this is kind of a problem for modern audiences, but here's a little something that people probably don't know. Walter Emmanuel Jones, the actor who played Zack, wanted to be the Black Ranger. Yeah, he knew what he was getting into. At least for Season 1, but we're not talking about Season 2 yet. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out there before anybody came after my throat in the comments. So, what kind of personality would Zack have? And this is really important because MMPR Season 1 was a product of its time, and there weren't really a lot of defined characteristics and personalities. So, there wasn't really a whole lot to work with regarding every single Ranger. With Zack, the best I can tell was that he was a bit of a jokester, didn't really take a lot of things seriously, and had a very unique way of fighting. Hip-hop keto was what the show called it, so yeah. But I looked back on all this and I thought, you know what? This guy could be the Flash of the group, as in Flash from Justice League or Justice League Unlimited. He's the heart of the group. You could also make an argument from Beast Boy from Teen Titans, as in the 2003 version, not Teen Titans Go, get that garbage out of my face. I say he's the heart of the group because he is generally trying to keep everybody's spirits lifted. He's the one trying to keep everybody together, you know? But this would be a problem for him because he can get a bit too cocky at certain points, which leads to him getting his ass kicked more times than not. Plus, if you had an episode like, say, that Pearl episode, for example, you know, the one where he got the dragon shield, that story could have a lot more impact with Zack because no other character could fit the role. Something that other seasons should have taken notice on. I'm looking at you, Samurai! But every character needs an arc. So what's Zack's arc? Essentially, the comic relief jokester who learns to grow up. Okay, I'm gonna try my best to explain this, so just bear with me for a few minutes. So, Zack doesn't seem to take things very seriously. Like, should he break a vase or something? Like a Ming vase. Or Ming vase. He's like, oh, whoops. Without realizing that it was very important to the owners and he would have to go on a journey of self-reflection, essentially. Realizing, God, I really screwed up. This ain't gonna be easy, is it? Sorry if that didn't really make a lot of sense. I just wanted to get across that he starts out as this guy who doesn't take things seriously, but grows into somebody who learns when and where to be more serious, for lack of a better term. With that said, we should probably go over the visual style right now. Now, what I wanted to do for this reimagining of MMPR was to sort of take a page from the artist Toku J's book, right? Now, he's done so many other Power Ranger teams, it is impossible to name them all, but Toku J is an absolute unit for making all these, and they look oh so good. But anyway, what I wanted to do for this season was to sort of give him an MCU look, but also try to mix in the Power Rangers Prime comics. Now, for those who are not aware of the Power Rangers Prime comics, think of them as like DC's Absolute Universe or Marvel's new Ultimate Universe. And if you don't know what those are, there's a lot of other people on YouTube who talk about them, so sorry about that. But the main thing that I wanted to do here was to make these look less like spandex and more like battle suits.
That is not spandex!
Now, what I did was that I wanted to give the Rangers something unique to their suits, just to help set them apart, you know? And one of the best ways I thought that I could do that was with the shoulder pads and the mouthpieces. Now, I'll be honest, I don't like the lip mouths on the original helmets. Okay, it just looks weird. You're already covering your mouth. Why do you need a fake one, you know? Anyway, I did decide to change up the mouthpieces and the shoulder pads to help differentiate them from a distance. It's sort of like how the Ninja Turtles have been doing it. Like, Mikey is the smallest and he has the smallest bandana. Donnie is often the tallest and lankiest. Or Raph. He's like the bulkiest one, but with a torn bandana. You know, that's the kind of mentality that I wanted to do for this. But every hero needs a few weapons at their disposal, right? Well, it just kind of depends on what you look for as a weapon. But anyway, so Zack's main sidearm is the Blade Blaster. Essentially, it's a laser pistol that can turn into a short sword. Every single Ranger is going to have one of these, so it's not really unique. But his main weapon is the Power Axe, which also turns into a gun, which instantly makes it everyone's favorite. And it also forms the base of the power cannon, which is their combined weapon. But there is one more weapon that I would like to give a lot more spotlight to, and that is the Thunder Slinger. Now, for context, the Thunder Slinger was an add-on for the Blade Blaster that only appeared in one episode and was never used again. Context is that they were fighting up a bunch of foot soldiers that were a lot stronger than normal and couldn't be defeated by normal means. So, Jason and Tommy had to go and get these new weapons that could help them out. But I don't like the design. I mean, come on. They were just glorified slingshots with extra steps. My proposal for a reinvented Thunder Slinger would essentially just be a barrel extension with a handguard. A lot of sci-fi guns do the handguard thing anyway, plus if we make it a barrel extension, then it could tap into a different power source, or it could just add more power to the base Blade Blaster, but I think we're just getting a bit too deep into that one, so I think I'll just move on. Up next in the roll call is Kimberly, the Pink Ranger. Now, with her, one, I did a bit of an overhaul with her helmet. Seriously, why was her helmet so different from the others? I don't get it. So, yeah, that was like one of the first things that I wanted to change. I wanted to make her helmet more of an actual pterodactyl, like how Jason's helmet is more of a tyrannosaur, or how Zach's helmet was a mastodon. So, yeah. Now, as for her personality, well, I would need to get into her story for that one. So, in Power Rangers continuity, Kimberly was a new arrival to Angel Grove compared to the others. Like, she just moved in about, like, a few months ago, but for this one, I want to say she moved in, like, 2 weeks before Rita was freed and started her rampage on the world. In that time, Kim left a bunch of friends behind, her parents have gone through a divorce, and she's kind of seen as the new pretty girl that everybody wants to be around. Now, this kind of scenario was introduced in the Boom Studios comics from, I want to say it was 2016, but it's a good story. Like, why change it? In fact, that's kind of something that I'm doing for a lot of the characters here. Like, they are mainly going to be taking inspiration from the Boom Studios comics in terms of background and stuff like that, but with slight changes. It's only natural that comics have their stories changed every once in a while. Speaking of the comics, a little fun detail that I would like to add is that Zach and Trini like to call Kimberly Salad Girl, but it's with a different context. Now, for context on where the name came from, Zach used to work at a restaurant as a busboy, but was ultimately fired thanks to Kimberly's family, and that's kind of how he knows her, so he gave her the nickname Salad Girl. But for my reinterpretation, Zach almost constantly sees Kimberly eating a salad, so that's where the Salad Girl nickname comes from. It's her comfort food. It's like how some people have sandwiches as comfort food, and I mean, you laugh now, but sometimes a good sandwich can make or break your day. Just saying. So that being said, Kim has a lot of negative emotions just welling up inside her, and to cope with it, she puts on a snarky, sarcastic personality, along with kind of acting like a valley girl in some way. Now you're probably asking, wait, how can she be a ranger at this point? She doesn't even have the qualifications for one. Well, that's when Zordon comes in. He can see right through Kimberly's act. He knows that deep down Kimberly is a good person. She just hasn't had the proper environment to fully settle into that personality yet. So Kim's whole arc in all this is that she softens her edges and learns to be a bit more compassionate, if that makes sense. But I think I'll just leave her story there because, well, there's a lot more to it than that, and I don't want to go too far into it. And as for weapons, Kimberly does have the standard Blade Blaster and eventual Thunder Slinger, but she has the Power Bow, as in archery. Basically, she can shoot a bunch of arrows into an opponent and it does a lot of damage, especially if it's on a weak point. Oh, and I also kind of forgot to mention her a shoulder pad shape is kind of meant to be a bit of a curved shape into a point. There's this thing in art called shape theory, and I kind of wanted to give the point that she is a friendly but also somewhat dangerous person because of all the points that are on here, which is reminiscent of triangles, but the curves are from circles to indicate that she's friendly. Like, think of Sonic the Hedgehog, right? He's mostly circles or curve shapes, but he has points, aka the quills on his back, to signify that he is dangerous in some way, shape, or form, right? That's kind of what I was getting at. Okay, moving on from Kimberly, we have Billy. Now, Billy was a bit of an easier one to figure out. His whole thing is that he's the classic zero to hero archetype. Billy is the team's brains. He is the one coming up with a lot of new inventions, like their communicators, and can also help out with Zord repairs or anything going on in the command center. In the beginning, Billy doesn't really have a lot of confidence in himself or his skills. Kind of why he's taking martial arts in the first place, but even then his form is off, and he's constantly guessing himself. Even though he has friends that can help him out with that, he still has that voice in the back of his head saying, "You're not good enough. You're not good enough." Throughout the show, I did want to explain where this sort of mentality came from, but I won't explain it here. I'll leave that up for you to decide. Now, as for Billy's weapons, he has the standard Blade Blaster and Thunder Slinger, but he has the Power Lance, which can split off into two parts, even though technically he doesn't really fight with it all that often. Though if he does, which I would like him to, he would tap into his inner Donatello with this one. Normally he wouldn't break it apart, but if he had to, he can make do with fighting with two weapons at once. And second to last, we have Trini, the Yellow Ranger. Now, again, Trini kind of falls into the same uncomfortable topic as Zack. Trini was Asian, she was a Yellow Ranger, yada yada yada. However, unlike Walter Emmanuel Jones, we don't know if Trini's actress actually wanted the color, or if it was just a case of there was nothing left to do, so kind of had to make do. But we can always take a page from the 2017 Power Rangers book in case that doesn't work. Now, as for Trini's personality, she's a whole no-nonsense kind of person, which can be handy in a lot of instances, but it does rub a lot of shoulders the wrong way. This mainly brings her into conflict with Zack, who is her polar opposite, and I'm just imagining so many funny scenarios with them now. Now, Trini gets this kind of personality from her parents. Now, they're not abusive by any means, but they do have this high standard for her to... Essentially, they want her to be perfect. There's more than one way to be a bad parent, folks. And being perfectionists, yeah, that's one of them. So as the show would go on, Trini would break her parents' shackles and set her own standards, not be held down by anybody else's. And of course with weapons, Blade Blaster, Thunder Slinger, but her main weapon are a set of daggers. I mean, come on, knife fights are cool, okay? Also, bit of a rant here. She says saber-toothed tiger, but saber-toothed tigers aren't a thing. That's a Smilodon. Tigers are not related to Smilodons in any way, shape, or form. It's a completely different ancestry. It was just incompetent archaeologists at the time comparing it to what was essentially the most powerful wildcat at the time. In fact, maybe it is still the most powerful Wildcat, but that's not the point. That's not the point. The point is, it was an inaccurate statement, and they just kept saying it like it's a fucking fact. Just... Sorry, I got off topic. Okay, time for the head honcho here. It is Jason, the Red Ranger. Now, Jason, I feel, is the most fleshed out of all of the Rangers I have thus far. Mainly because, well, Red Rangers are often the main character of a show, and for the Japanese series, it definitely was the case. So, why not have a little bit of that DNA in here too? So, Jason's story is that when he was little, like 4, maybe 5 years old, his mom died of an illness. I don't know which one yet, but she died of an illness either way. And through this loss, Jason lashed out at everyone and everything around him. It even got to the point where he was in and out of juvenile detention at age 10. One day, though, he met up with a martial arts master through circumstances. I'm not entirely sure how they would do that just yet. But the master can see that Jason is hurting inside and doesn't know how to properly deal with it. So the master meets up with Jason's father, and after a bit of a conversation, Jason's dad essentially says, "Please help my son, I don't know what to do anymore." And while it was a rocky start, Jason did eventually open his eyes and see the damage that he's done just by being angry. And this serves as motivation to help people who are going down a similarly dark road. It gives us an explanation as to why he practices martial arts in the first place, but kind of gives you a deeper connection with the guy, something that the original series kind of lacked. Oh, and adding on to this, I am making Jason and Trini a couple. They are getting together like in the Boom Studios comics. But unlike those comics, they are not breaking up. In the comics, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Trini said that she wants to call it off because it could cause conflict with the team's dynamic, and I'm just like, bitch, these are your friends. They know you guys. They know you. They would support you. You think something like this would actually, like, hurt the team's dynamic if you're open about it? Like, come on. You're in a much better position than characters like Hank Pym's Ant-Man with his abusive relationship, or Peter Parker's many girlfriends, or even Batman. Do you know how many women the Dark Knight has been with over the years? Exactly. Sorry about that, just had to get off my chest. So, Jason's whole arc throughout the show would essentially just bearing the weight of responsibility. Because he's the leader, he's the example, the one that everybody should strive to be like. But he eventually realizes he's not the only one who's carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. And learns, to trust his team, or, just general stuff like that. It's a very common trope with leaders, especially with teenagers who have this kind of responsibility thrown onto them. So it makes sense for Jason to have it. And of course, with his weapons, he has the Blade Blaster, Thunder Slinger, but his unique weapon is the Power Sword, said to be the most powerful out of the 5 original weapons. But wait! There's more! Yeah, you didn't think I'd forget about Tommy, did you? The Green Ranger? Come on. So, Tommy's story is pretty much the same. It's the Green with Evil arc. He shows up at a martial arts tournament, gives Jason a run for his money, is tested by Rita to become her new Green Ranger, and for about 5 episodes, he starts kicking the Ranger's ass left, right, and sideways. I really wouldn't change much of anything with that particular story, except for what happens after it. So any Ranger fan would know about the Green Candle story and just how freaking stupid it is. I'm sorry, but it feels like that they had to use candles because the original Japanese series had it. You don't always need to incorporate everything from that series. God. So, That particular story is going to change significantly, and here's why. So, Tommy's power coin, which is how he even accesses his powers in the first place, was reliant on Rita's magic for the longest time. And now that Tommy is cut off from that source, his powers are slowly draining. Meaning that when Tommy joins the team, he's on the clock because his powers are draining. Zordon would try to get the coin used to his energy, but it's a slow-going process, and eventually, Tommy will have no choice but to morph and drain all of his power, or at least most of it. But I think I'm getting a bit too ahead of myself. So, Tommy is the new kid in town. He's a bit of a fish out of water, and he also feels incredibly awkward around the main team because, well, he did spend a few episodes trying to kill them, so yeah, I would be kind of hesitant to hang around them too. Though the team does openly accept him and even sparks a bit of a rivalry with Jason. It is competitive at first, as seen in the Gung Ho episode, which is where the Thunderslingers come into play, but they eventually develop it into more of a Ken and Ryu sort of rivalry, where they're still friends, but they like to see how far the others come along, you know? Now, back to the Green Candle story, or my replacement for it at least. Like I said, Tommy is forced to morph and use up most of his power. But this leaves a problem. If the power goes out completely, then Rita will have full access to the Dragon Zord, and the only way to save it is by transferring the power coin to somebody else. And he picks Jason. And no, Tommy is not coming back as the Green Ranger. I have my reasons for this one, but it's mainly because I think you can still make Tommy an impactful character outside of being a Ranger. And one of the best ways to do that is to not make him a Ranger again. He would still pop up every now and again, you know, help the Rangers wherever and whenever he can, as well as keeping their secret, that's the most important thing. But also helping them with their more, you know, the human side of things, right? Now, Tommy's kit is a little bit different because he has no Blade Blaster and therefore no Thunderslinger. He is rocking a couple of unique items such as the Dragon Shield. It's a form of protection that Tommy can grant to any member of his team. However, Jason and Zack are the most iconic members who use it. Second is his main weapon, the Dragon Dagger. Essentially, it's a combination of Trini's power daggers and Jason's power sword. However, this acts as a flute, which allows him to control the Dragon Zord. He also has a third weapon, which was mainly a one-time use item called the Sword of Darkness. This weapon was meant to enforce Rita's mind control over Tommy, but Jason destroyed it during the final episode of the Green with Evil arc. But of course, no group of heroes is complete without a mentor figure, and in this case, we have Zordon of Eltar, along with his assistant Alpha 5. Now, I probably should mention that I did not have any assets for them that I created myself because, oh boy, I want to get this video done now. This is the first video that I make of 2026. Okay, so I'm going to try and make this as brief as I possibly can, so here we go. Zordon is an alien who has been trapped for 10,000 years in a time warp. Time warp is basically a pocket dimension where time works a lot differently. Zordon has history with the main villain for this season, Rita Repulsa. On the day that Rita is freed, Zordon tracks down the main 5 and brings them on board as Power Rangers. Zordon's role is meant to give elderly sage advice, you know, kind of like what a real mentor would do, and in some kind of way act as a father figure that the Rangers never knew that they needed, or maybe a grandfather or a wise uncle or something. And as for Alpha, well, he's not very deep. He's a robot who is very curious about humanity, and he hasn't really experienced much of any of it, so the Rangers are a prime opportunity for him. And no, he doesn't become Skynet. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, so now we got the villains, because what's a hero without villains? Boring, that's what. Now, I'm gonna be honest here. Most of their stories are derived from the Boom Studios comics. Just with slight changes here and there because, well, it's creative liberty, and naturally some things change with comic adaptation to show or movie, So I'll just run over them real quick before getting into the Queen Bee herself. First up is Goldar, Rita's field lieutenant. In the comics, his story was that he had a sibling who questioned a higher power and was ultimately killed for it. I still wanted to keep that here, but just for creative liberty, I wanted to change it to he had a sister who was killed instead, so would ultimately be the same. Next is Babu, Rita's alchemist and chemical genius. His story is lifted straight from the comic. He was tasked with making a potion for his people to become invincible. His king was too eager McBeaver and ultimately turned into a statue after drinking it. He was locked in a dungeon by his people, and Rita emotionally manipulated him into joining her side. Next is Finster, Rita's monster maker. His story in the comics was incredibly dark. First, he grew bored with the peace on his homeworld, so he made a monster to cause chaos. Second, his wife would have ratted out on him if there wasn't an accident where she cracked her head on the edge of a table. And after Rita weaponized his grief against him, Finster became her monster maker. In his spare time, he would try to recreate his wife, only to have a mental breakdown and break the statue and start all over again. Yes, please. I'd like more of that in this show. The only thing that I would change is instead of Finster's wife cracking her head on a table, she fell off a cliff and became paste, essentially. That's really it. Next is Squat, who is one of the heavier departures from the comics because I didn't like how he was. He was just offered as a peace offering, but he's now the last of his kind. I don't really like that. So for my reinterpretation of Squat, he was essentially a master thief, but when he tried to steal from Rita, he was essentially forced into stealing for her from now on. And finally, we have Scorpina, a character that we didn't really get a lot of background information for. So I just decided to make her an infiltrator, essentially, like her Japanese version. Basically, she was not sealed away with Rita and the others and essentially integrated into human life, only to be called upon when Rita needed her. And much like the Japanese version, she would get together with Goldar because she kind of has a thing for him, but there wouldn't be a child. I'm just pointing that out there. So yeah, not every villain has all this deep philosophical or moral things behind it. They're just evil for the sake of evil, and in today's climate, I think we just need that kind of energy again. And finally, we get to Rita Repulsa, the cackling space witch herself. So, like I said before, she and Zordon have a lot of history together. In fact, they're both from the same planet of Eltar. So, in her younger days, Rita would train in magic, but when she got a taste for the dark stuff, that's when she really went off the deep end. Now, Rita's magic was able to impress somebody with a lot of resources, power, and ambition. So much so that after a while, she was able to make her own cell, which consisted of who we talked about earlier. And eventually, after a very, very, very long time, Rita meets Zordon on Earth. Their final battle was a stalemate. Zordon managed to seal Rita inside of a capsule and send it off-world, while Rita sealed Zordon inside of her time warp. And now that she's freed, she wants to pick up where she left off. However, as the show would go on, hints are dropped that she's doing this not for her own volition, but for somebody else. Hey, glad you made it to the end of the video. I know it's kind of an abrupt ending and, all that stuff. I didn't even talk about the Zords yet. kind of feel ashamed about that, but this video has been going on for long enough, so I figured I'd end it while I had a chance. I actually kind of enjoyed making this one, because this one feels more genuine compared to the actual script, even though, like, scripts are a bit more professional, but this one feels a little bit more genuine, and I feel more comfortable trying to get my thoughts down for this one. Oh, before I forget, though, I would like to make this a series on how I would reboot the Power Rangers franchise in general. I mainly started with MMPR Season 1 because it's ground zero and is where the Disney series seems to be going with, so I figured I'd just start here and test the waters a little bit. But the only way that I can tell if you guys really, really want it is if the video does well enough, or if you guys just let me know in the comments. Speaking of which, I guess it's time for my outro then. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like, comment down below, and if you're new around here, please subscribe to the channel because we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, and every little click helps out a lot. Until next time, Celestial Dragoons, remember, reach for the stars. It's good to be back.